You destroyed my life, old man, but I'm going to destroy everything you've ever built. Bradley Morrison's voice echoed through the empty parking garage as he screamed into his phone at 3 a.m., 6 months after being publicly humiliated and disowned by his father in that legendary boardroom confrontation. What the person on the other end of that call did and know was that Bradley had just finalized the most twisted revenge plot in corporate history, a scheme so diabolical that it would put innocent lives at risk and destroy his father's company from the inside out. But what Bradley didn't know was that Uncle Sam had been monitoring his activities since the day he left Morrison Industries, and the evidence of what this spoiled rich kid was planning would shock even the most experienced investigators. "I don't care who gets hurt in the process," Bradley continued, his voice filled with the kind of cold hatred that only comes from someone whose entire identity had been built on inherited privilege. "If that bastard wants to play hardball, I'll show him what real power looks like. By the time I'm finished, Morrison Industries will be nothing but a smoking crater, and everyone will know that Robert Morrison was a failure who couldn't even control his own son." The person on the other end of the call was Dr. Sarah Chun, a disgraced industrial chemist who had been fired from 3 major corporations for safety violations and who was now about to help Bradley commit what would essentially amount to corporate terrorism. But here's the plot twist that will blow your mind. The person recording every word of that conversation wasn't some random security guard or private investigator. It was Uncle Sam himself, who had been working undercover as a night janitor in Bradley's apartment building for the past 4 months, documenting the young man's descent into criminal planning while building an airtight case that would not only stop the revenge plot, but expose a network of corporate saboteurs that had been operating throughout American industry for years. Before I tell you how Uncle Sam infiltrated Bradley's inner circle and discovered a conspiracy that reached far beyond one spoiled rich kid's daddy issues, let me ask you something that might hit close to home. Have you ever been so angry at someone that you fantasized about destroying their life completely? Drop your city in the comments and tell me about a time when someone's betrayal made you want revenge. Because what Bradley Morrison was planning goes far beyond normal human anger into something that can only be described as pure evil. Now, please forgive me for taking a moment to settle in properly for this story. My back has been acting up something fierce this week, and at my age, these tales of revenge and corporate sabotage require a comfortable position and my full attention. Thank you for your patience with an old storyteller who's seen too many cases where hurt feelings turned into dangerous criminal plots. To understand how Bradley Morrison went from humiliated rich kid to potential corporate terrorist in just 6 months, we need to examine the psychological transformation that occurred after his public destruction in that Morrison Industries boardroom. The young man who had walked into that meeting believing he was about to inherit a billion-dollar empire walked out with literally nothing. No job, no inheritance, no family support, and a reputation so toxic that legitimate companies wouldn't even consider hiring him for entry-level positions. The immediate aftermath of Bradley's disgrace was exactly what Uncle Sam had predicted during his investigation. The young man's entire identity had been built on inherited privilege and family wealth. So, when those foundations were removed, he experienced what psychologists call narcissistic collapse, a complete breakdown of self-worth that often leads to dangerous compensatory behaviors. For the first month after his termination, Bradley had tried to maintain his expensive lifestyle through credit cards and loans, believing that his situation was temporary and that his father would eventually forgive him and restore his position. He continued living in his luxury downtown loft, driving his BMW and eating at expensive restaurants while telling anyone who would listen that his father had been manipulated by jealous board members who were threatened by Bradley's innovative ideas. But reality has a way of crushing delusions, especially when those delusions are expensive to maintain. Bradley's credit cards were maxed out within 6 weeks. His car was repossessed after 8 weeks, and his landlord began eviction proceedings after 10 weeks of missed rent payments. The spoiled rich kid who had never experienced financial consequences was learning what it felt like to have his American Express cards declined at restaurants where he had once thrown around $1,000 tips. The psychological impact was devastating and transformative. Bradley began obsessively monitoring news coverage of Morrison Industries, looking for signs that the company was struggling without his visionary leadership. When he discovered that the company was actually performing better than ever under new management, his wounded ego transformed into something much darker and more dangerous. That's when Bradley began researching methods for destroying his father's company, starting with relatively minor sabotage ideas like spreading false rumors or orchestrating negative publicity campaigns. But as his financial situation deteriorated and his isolation increased, his revenge fantasies became increasingly elaborate and dangerous. The turning point came when Bradley discovered online forums where disgruntled former employees shared strategies for sabotaging their previous employers. These communities were filled with people who had been fired, passed over for promotion, or otherwise felt wronged by their companies, and they provided detailed tutorials on everything from computer hacking to industrial sabotage. What Bradley found in these dark corners of the internet was a network of people who had turned corporate revenge into a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Former chemists who could create undetectable contaminations, ex-IT specialists who could plant logic bombs in computer systems, disgraced engineers who knew how to cause accidents that would appear to be equipment failures rather than sabotage. The most dangerous of these contacts was Dr. Sarah Chun, a brilliant industrial chemist who had been fired from DuPont, 3M, and Johnson & Johnson for repeatedly violating safety protocols in pursuit of faster results and higher profits. Sarah had been blacklisted from legitimate employment after her last termination, involved contaminating a batch of medical equipment that resulted in 17 patient deaths at hospitals across the Midwest. Sarah had spent the 3 years since her final termination developing what she called corporate assassination services, sophisticated sabotage techniques that could destroy companies while appearing to be accidents, equipment failures, or natural disasters. Her client base consisted of vengeful former employees, competitor companies, and occasionally foreign governments looking to damage American industrial capabilities. When Bradley contacted Sarah through encrypted messaging channels, she immediately recognized him as the perfect client: unlimited financial motivation, personal vendetta against a high-profile target, and enough inherited knowledge about Morrison Industries' operations to provide the inside information necessary for sophisticated sabotage. The plan they developed together was diabolical in its scope and terrifying in its potential consequences. Morrison Industries manufactured precision components for medical devices, automotive safety systems, and aerospace applications. Sarah's strategy involved contaminating key manufacturing processes with chemicals that would cause gradual degradation in the company's products, leading to catastrophic failures that would kill customers while appearing to be design flaws rather than sabotage. The beauty of Sarah's approach was that the contamination would be undetectable during normal quality control testing, but would cause products to fail catastrophically after several months of normal use. By the time the failures began occurring, the contaminated materials would be distributed across thousands of products in critical applications, potentially causing hundreds of deaths while destroying Morrison Industries' reputation and exposing the company to billions in liability. But Sarah's plan had an even more twisted, psychological component designed to maximize Bradley's revenge against his father. The sabotage would be timed to coincide with Robert Morrison's planned retirement announcement, ensuring that the company's destruction would occur just as the founder was preparing to celebrate his life's work and legacy. What neither Bradley nor Sarah realized was that Uncle Sam had been monitoring their communications since their first contact. The online forums where they had connected were actually being monitored by a joint FBI-CIA task force investigating foreign industrial sabotage, and Uncle Sam had been brought in as a consultant because of his expertise in corporate infiltration and evidence gathering. Uncle Sam's investigation revealed that Bradley and Sarah were part of a much larger criminal network that had been responsible for dozens of accidents and equipment failures at American companies over the past 5 years. The network operated through encrypted messaging systems and cryptocurrency payments, making it difficult for traditional law enforcement to track their activities. The challenge Uncle Sam faced was that Sarah's sabotage methods were so sophisticated that stopping her would require understanding exactly how she planned to contaminate Morrison Industries' manufacturing processes. This meant that Uncle Sam needed to get close enough to observe their planning sessions, while gathering evidence that could be used to prosecute the entire criminal network. That's when Uncle Sam made one of the most dangerous decisions of his investigative career. He would go undercover as a potential new client for Sarah's sabotage services, claiming to be a former Morrison Industries employee who also wanted revenge against the company. The plan was risky because it required Uncle Sam to participate in criminal planning, while avoiding actually helping to implement any sabotage. Uncle Sam's cover identity was Thomas Wilson, a former Morrison Industries quality control manager who had been fired for reporting safety violations and was now seeking revenge against the company that had destroyed his career. The backstory was carefully crafted to appeal to Sarah's sense of injustice while providing Uncle Sam with credible knowledge about Morrison Industries operations. The first meeting between Uncle Sam, Bradley, and Sarah took place in a private dining room at an expensive restaurant that Bradley was paying for with borrowed money from his criminal contacts. Uncle Sam's performance as the bitter former employee was so convincing that both Bradley and Sarah immediately accepted him as a legitimate co-conspirator. What Uncle Sam observed during that meeting was both fascinating and terrifying from a criminal psychology perspective. Bradley had completely transformed from the arrogant but essentially harmless rich kid who had been humiliated in the boardroom into someone capable of planning mass murder in pursuit of personal revenge. Sarah, meanwhile, was clearly a sociopathic genius who took professional pride in her ability to cause maximum damage while avoiding detection. She described previous sabotage operations with the kind of technical precision that most people reserved for discussing academic research, showing no awareness that she was talking about activities that had killed dozens of innocent people. During that first meeting, Sarah outlined the specific chemicals and delivery methods she would use to contaminate Morrison Industries' manufacturing processes. The contamination would be introduced through the facility's water supply system during scheduled maintenance, ensuring that it would spread throughout the manufacturing facility without being detected by security, cameras, or personnel monitoring. Let me pause here for just a moment to take a sip of water and adjust my position. These stories of premeditated corporate violence always affect me more deeply than simple financial fraud cases. When I was younger, I thought corporate crime was mostly about money, but after decades of investigation, I've learned that the most dangerous criminals are often motivated by personal grievances that have festered into something truly evil. Thank you for bearing with me as I continue this difficult but important story. The evidence Uncle Sam gathered during subsequent meetings was comprehensive and horrifying. Sarah had detailed plans for contaminating not just Morrison Industries, but 17 other companies whose former employees had hired her services. The network was operating like a franchise business, with Sarah providing technical expertise while local conspirators provided inside knowledge and access. Bradley's role in the Morrison Industries operation was to provide building access codes, security camera schedules, and information about which manufacturing processes would be most vulnerable to contamination. His inherited knowledge of the company's operations made him an invaluable asset for planning sabotage that would be virtually impossible to detect or prevent. But Uncle Sam also discovered that Bradley's motivations went beyond simple revenge against his father. The young man had become genuinely convinced that destroying Morrison Industries would somehow restore his social status and prove his superiority to everyone who had witnessed his humiliation. He believed that successfully destroying his father's company would demonstrate his own power and intelligence. The psychological transformation was complete. Bradley Morrison had evolved from entitled rich kid to potential mass murderer, all because his ego couldn't accept the consequences of his own betrayal and incompetence. Uncle Sam recognized that this case represented something more dangerous than typical corporate crime. It was domestic terrorism motivated by personal grievance. The breakthrough in Uncle Sam's investigation came when Sarah made a critical operational security mistake. During a planning meeting, she mentioned that the chemicals she would use for the Morrison Industries sabotage were being stored at a warehouse facility that she also used for other ongoing operations. If Uncle Sam could locate that warehouse, he could potentially gather evidence about the entire criminal network while preventing multiple sabotage operations. Uncle Sam's decades of investigative experience had taught him to recognize opportunities for maximum impact, and Sarah's warehouse represented exactly that kind of opportunity. Rather than simply preventing the Morrison Industries sabotage, he could potentially shut down an entire network of corporate terrorists while saving hundreds of potential victims. Working with FBI task force coordinators, Uncle Sam developed a plan to identify the warehouse location while maintaining his undercover identity. The approach required him to volunteer for a more active role in the sabotage operation, claiming that his engineering background made him qualified to help with technical planning. Sarah's ego and her confidence in Uncle Sam's cover identity led her to agree to show him the warehouse facility, where she stored her chemical supplies and manufacturing equipment. The facility was located in an industrial district outside Detroit, disguised as a legitimate chemical storage business, but actually serving as headquarters for a criminal network that spanned multiple states. What Uncle Sam discovered at the warehouse exceeded his worst expectations. Sarah had been stockpiling industrial chemicals sufficient for dozens of major sabotage operations, including materials that could contaminate water supplies, cause explosions in manufacturing facilities, and create environmental disasters that would take decades to remediate. The warehouse also contained detailed files on over 100 potential targets, including defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, food processing facilities, and critical infrastructure sites. Sarah's criminal network wasn't just focused on revenge-motivated sabotage. They were building capabilities for large-scale economic warfare against American industry. Uncle Sam realized that he had uncovered something far more significant than a single revenge plot. This was a criminal conspiracy that posed a genuine threat to national security, with the capability to cause economic damage comparable to a military attack on American industrial capacity. The evidence-gathering phase of Uncle Sam's investigation required weeks of careful documentation while maintaining his cover identity and avoiding activities that would actually contribute to criminal planning. Every meeting with Bradley and Sarah was recorded. Every document was photographed, and every contact in their network was identified and tracked. The final phase of the investigation began when Sarah announced that the Morrison Industries sabotage would commence within 72 hours. The timing coincided with scheduled maintenance at the manufacturing facility, providing the access necessary to introduce contamination into the water supply system. Uncle Sam coordinated with FBI tactical teams to execute simultaneous raids on the warehouse, Sarah's residence, Bradley's apartment, and the homes of 17 other conspirators across 6 states. The operation was timed to occur just hours before the sabotage was scheduled to begin, preventing the contamination while preserving evidence of the criminal conspiracy. The confrontation that ended Bradley Morrison's criminal career began at 5:30 a.m., when FBI agents burst into his apartment while he was preparing for what he believed would be his triumphant revenge against his father. Bradley was found in possession of Morrison Industries building access codes, security schedules, and detailed plans for introducing contamination into the manufacturing facility. The evidence against Bradley was overwhelming and undeniable. Recorded conversations with Sarah detailing the sabotage plan, financial records showing payments to criminal contacts, computer files containing information about Morrison Industries operations that could only have been obtained through his previous employment. But the most damaging evidence was Bradley's own words, recorded during planning sessions where he expressed satisfaction about the potential deaths that would result from the sabotage. The young man who had once claimed to love his father's company was now on record celebrating the prospect of killing the company's customers in pursuit of personal revenge. Sarah's arrest at the warehouse revealed the true scope of the criminal network she had been operating. FBI agents seized enough industrial chemicals to contaminate water supplies for major cities, along with detailed plans for sabotaging critical infrastructure sites across the American industrial base. The federal charges against Bradley Morrison were severe and comprehensive: conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism, planning to tamper with consumer products, conspiracy to commit mass murder, and violation of the Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act. Each charge carried potential sentences of life imprisonment, and the prosecution made it clear that they would seek the maximum penalties. During Bradley's federal trial, prosecutors presented evidence showing that his revenge plot would have resulted in hundreds of deaths and billions of dollars in economic damage. Expert witnesses testified that Sarah's contamination methods were sophisticated enough to avoid detection until products began failing in critical applications like medical devices and automotive safety systems. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed that Bradley had undergone a complete personality transformation driven by narcissistic rage and an inability to accept responsibility for his own actions. Mental health experts testified that his evolution from entitled rich kid to potential mass murderer represented one of the most extreme cases of revenge-motivated radicalization they had ever observed. Uncle Sam's testimony during the trial provided crucial evidence about the criminal network's operations and Bradley's enthusiastic participation in planning activities that would have killed innocent people. His recordings of planning sessions demonstrated that Bradley was not just a passive participant but an active advocate for maximizing the damage to his father's company regardless of human consequences. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Bradley Morrison was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, making him one of the youngest people ever to receive such a severe sentence for domestic terrorism charges. Sarah Chun received multiple life sentences for her role in organizing the criminal network and planning numerous sabotage operations. The warehouse raid had prevented not only the Morrison Industries attack but 17 other planned sabotage operations that would have caused hundreds of deaths and billions in economic damage. Robert Morrison's reaction to his son's arrest and conviction was a mixture of relief and profound sadness. In a statement released through Morrison Industries, he expressed gratitude that the sabotage plot had been prevented while acknowledging the personal tragedy of his son's transformation into someone capable of planning mass murder. The case became a landmark in domestic terrorism prosecution and led to new federal legislation strengthening penalties for industrial sabotage and corporate terrorism. The FBI established a new task force specifically focused on monitoring revenge-motivated threats against American businesses. Uncle Sam's investigation was recognized as one of the most significant infiltration operations in FBI history, preventing what could have been the deadliest act of domestic terrorism since September 11th. His work exposed a criminal network that had been operating undetected for years while planning attacks on critical American infrastructure. The broader impact of the case extended far beyond preventing a single sabotage operation. The investigation revealed vulnerabilities in corporate security that had been exploited by foreign and domestic terrorists, leading to new industry standards for protecting manufacturing facilities and supply chains. Morrison Industries implemented comprehensive security upgrades and employee monitoring systems designed to prevent future infiltration by disgruntled former employees or external saboteurs. The company's proactive response became a model for other manufacturers seeking to protect their operations from similar threats. Uncle Sam continued his specialized work investigating corporate crime, but the Bradley Morrison case remained one of his most significant achievements because it demonstrated how personal grievances could evolve into genuine threats to national security if left unchecked. Years later, Bradley Morrison remained in federal prison, his transformation from privileged rich kid to convicted terrorist serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked narcissism and the importance of accountability in corporate leadership. The case also highlighted the sophisticated nature of modern corporate terrorism and the need for specialized investigators like Uncle Sam who could infiltrate criminal networks while gathering evidence that would stand up in federal court. As I reflect on this case, I am struck by how different Bradley's story could have been if he had chosen to learn from his mistakes rather than plotting revenge against the people who had held him accountable. The young man had every advantage in life, but he lacked the character to accept responsibility for his actions and build something positive from his failure. So what do you think about revenge plots like Bradley's? Have you ever encountered someone whose anger at being held accountable turned into something dangerous? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what city you rewatching from and share any experiences you've had with people who could unaccept the consequences of their own actions. But before you go, I need to tell you about Uncle Sam's next investigation, because it involves something that will shake your faith in American healthcare. Picture this: a pharmaceutical executive who discovered that her company's new diabetes medication was actually killing patients faster than the disease itself. But instead of pulling the drug from the market, she covered up the deaths and increased production to maximize profits before anyone could stop her. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because Uncle Sam's next story involves the pharmaceutical executive who chose profits over patients. Uncle Sam's investigation exposes a medical murder conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government. The lesson from Bradley Morrison's tragic transformation remains clear. Accountability and consequences are not punishments to be avoided, but opportunities for growth and redemption that can prevent good people from becoming monsters. And sometimes it takes someone like Uncle Sam to ensure that those who choose the path of revenge and terrorism face justice before they can harm innocent people.